Hello everyone, welcome to today's session for the Tinkerpreneur Bootcamp. As we conclude with the first few weeks, we'll now start slowly moving from all the technical skills you've been learning to actually making sense of those technical skills to address problems that you see, to come up with innovative solutions, and to translate them from just things you know to things you can build and improve. To get us started with this transition, we have Siddharth today. He's the Director of Product Management in Microsoft's Strategic Mission and Technology Division. And before this, he's been an entrepreneur himself and has worked on a bunch of exciting different projects across geographies and I think primarily focused in healthcare, but other sectors as well. So I'll let him talk to you more about, of course, what he's done and what he's doing today, but also take you to how you can think about design in products. Often, when we think of design, we think of complex things that a few people who have great artistic abilities can do. But today's session will help you think about design and the way you can contextualize it for what you are trying to build. So with that, I hand it over to Siddharth to walk you through the session. As and when you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye out for them and we'll be taking them up towards the end of the session.
Thank you, Varya. And I hope it's okay if I can share my screen quickly
Let's go for
and
it.
potentially walk you through some of my journey because I'm a visual thinker, and that's one of the things that I kind of like about design thinking. And it's not about your artistic ability as much as the idea that you can think about what it could be in the real world. So how do you translate an idea which is in your head onto something that can be then translated into a real tangible thing, whether in the real world or the metaverse as we know today, like Web3 is taking off. So yeah, everything's fair game. But before we get started, I want to sort of talk about who am I. I'm Siddharth Chaturvedi. I work at Microsoft in our strategic missions and technology division, where we incubate a few crazy ideas. Some of them work, some of them don't, but there's a lot of learning across the board. And today I'm going to be talking about some of the ways that I think, the mental models that I have, and potentially that you could have as well, to sort of grow and change the ideas, tinker with your ideas, and make them sort of into world-changing things. Uh, these are just some of the things I went to INSEAD for my B school. I have an undergrad in computer science, and I come from a family of doctors. And why am I telling you all of this? Because it's our unique experiences and identities that help us be who we are. That kind of forms the unique perspective that you bring to a problem, to finding a solution, to partnership, to coalition. So one of the things that I would say is like embrace who you are, embrace the uniqueness or the quirkiness that you have. I have, and that allows me to do from things like we talked about healthcare to building programs that help you scale. So the middle one is something that I will talk about, which is mosquito-centric user experience, how we got there and what did we do to get there, and building programs that scale and help and enable others like AI for Health. In the photograph, I'm with Anna Ertz, who's the head of the Novartis Foundation. And sometimes you have to realize that you have a shared vision with somebody else, and to collate and coalesce your sort of work with somebody to partner with them, understand those interdependencies, because the impact is a lot larger. So it's about not like owning your thing in a silo, but expanding. And that's why like that is so powerful. Seeing Anne and myself, I was representing Microsoft, of course. But where do I come from? So a large part of it is that we talk about our successes, but we don't normally see what's behind the success. So a lot of people sort of saw, if you were there around in 2013, 2014, I was a part of the ET Now Lufthansa runway to success. And the heights of my career at that point of time was a startup being selected uh, for MIT's Global Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, me being on national television. But for each of those things, there's a lot of hard work that happens behind the scenes. And that's where you have to go and work with the communities, work with the people, co-develop solutions and ideate them in different ways. So let me tell you a story about how I got here. The right hand side of the slide, which is the photo of me sitting there. Um, it was fascinating because prior to that, I was working for a technology consulting company for predominantly financial services customers. And a large part of the focus over there was how do you build the best machine learning models, which could be deployed into these large financial companies for a variety of things like anomaly detection and finding out like issues in transactions. I asked myself a question, which was like, what if I can translate all of these sort of models that I'm building here to an ecosystem that I know about, which is healthcare and specifically health camps in rural India, because my father organizes health camps in Western UP. We collect a lot of information. He's been working with organizations such as the Family Planning Association of India for I don't know how many years now, like over 30 years. I've been to those health camps and we collect a lot of information. And at the end of the day, we have an annual report that goes out for a specific either disease area or an impact area that we care about. So there was a lot more information sitting there. And I was like, okay, can I think about in some way or form to use all of this information for bettering the health of the people that we serve? So, so if we are focused on tuberculosis, can we use the information that we're collecting for tuberculosis for something else? And that was a hypothesis. And I'll come back to hypothesis testing in a bit. It's very important as a part of the design process. And the thing was like I tried to translate everything that I learned from financial services into healthcare and use those models and those approaches. And then I built a model. I sort of ran a machine learning algorithm. And I was like, okay, maybe this will work. I had some synthetic data that I created and I worked with it. And those were my skills, like I said, those hard skills. Like I know how to code, I know how to do data science, I know how to basically build models. Uh, and then I got to this place. It had no structured data, which is what I was working with at that point of time. I realized the ecosystem that I was working with previously was very heterogeneous. So let me give you very homogeneous. Let me give you an example of that. A dollar is a dollar, a rupee is a rupee. Like if you have 1 rupee, it's the same as me having 1 rupee. But if you have a headache, it could mean something very different from me having a headache. And that's where I realized, okay, my approach needs to change and I need to understand more stuff about what am I trying to solve. I started working with subject matter experts, talking to them. I had the ability to use my dad's network to talk to doctors, uh, but I reached out to people. I reached out to people working on the ground. I reached out to community workers. I said, let me volunteer in health camps and be a part of the process and learn how you make it happen. Because the problem with the earlier approach was I thought I knew the solution and I was like, I just need to implement the solution and go out there and I will give them this like cool new technology and everybody will love it and it will work. The problem with the cool new technology was there was no internet and it was really hard to collect data in a digital format. So I had to go and create an entire value chain around building trust with the community, understanding why am I using the data, what kind of data do I need to use, what are the privacy preserving mechanisms that I can build on top of it. And this is before I even build a model, like before even I get to the core skill set that I had. So that was a great learning experience for me to sort of go back, think deeply about the community, the problems that you want to solve, the value chain of those problems, who do you affect, how to build them, and why should they care? Like, why would they even care about it? So building technology for technology's sake is something that I've learned is kind of futile sometimes, not always, sometimes, but it's really about the application, thinking deeply with the subject matter experts, with the domain experts, with the people who know about it, uh, and collaborating with them. That helps you have the highest scale of impact. And that also helps you understand how you could fail quickly. A large part of my learning was I came in with a mindset that I knew the solution, which was wrong. And because it's easy to look at a problem and be like, this is the solution. And you realize there's a whole ton of things that will make it fail, like essentially things not working out because the community doesn't trust you, things not working out because the data is not in the format that you want it to be, things not working out because there is no hardware or the internet for you to deploy those models on. And I still remember I went back and I built a lamp stack, which is a fancy way of saying a connected computer in the back of my car. And I used to take it around so that I could have local wireless connectivity. And that was also like acquiring the skills that I did not have. I did not know how networking worked, but I had to learn how connectivity and networking would work for my startup to be successful. So when you think about this entire value chain, when you think about the problem space, not the problem that you're trying to solve, but the entire problem space, you learn two things. The first one is, how can I uniquely leverage my skills, my identities, my experiences, my perspective, but also where are the gaps? What do I need to learn? Or what do I need to partner with? Because a lot of people like hyper focus on building all the skills in themselves, which is amazing if you can do that. But a faster way of doing that, a hack as I call it, is partnering with somebody who's good in those skills. And that's the other part that I want to drive. The importance of collaboration is key. And that collaboration can happen with a like-minded entrepreneur who has a shared vision. It could be with somebody working on the same problem but with a different perspective. It could be with somebody who's downstream in the value chain. So the core idea is that you don't need to be a singer to really appreciate music. Like I appreciate all of these amazing singers that I've heard. I can never sing as good as Muhammad Rafi, but that does not mean that I stop respecting that. That does not mean that I don't like listening to Muhammad Rafi. So the point is, you need to respect the skills that others might have as well, and think about how you can leverage those skills to solve the problem that you are trying to solve. So, just to give you an example of some of the work that I've done, so essentially, I built this co-created with six other people, $40 million AI for Health initiative, which was fascinating for me because when I was trying to build my startup and I was trying to raise money, I was unable to. And a large part of that was because I was trying to focus on uh, one kind of solution, which was my thinking of how we should be solving this problem. That is important, but sometimes that is before the time that it's mature for. So market maturity is very important. At that point of time, 2013, India was focused on e-commerce. And I actually have people who have told me like, hey, Sid, forget about this machine learning stuff in healthcare. E-commerce is the next big thing. And do you know what? They were right. They were not wrong. At that point of time, whoever's invested in e-commerce actually grew. Healthcare kind of took off only in 2019, 2020, and really spiraled, like grew after the pandemic. So knowing when the market is right is also very important to solve the problems that you're trying to solve. And that means that the market is aware, the market is ready, the market is accepting of your solution. So it's also a two-way strain that you face. How do you create a market, but also how do you capture that market? And I'll come back to some of the mental models that I have around those. The second one was more opportunistic. So I was working with people who were building these amazing biomedical natural language processing models, way better than I can ever do. And COVID hit. And we said, like, there's so much information out there, but we don't know what to trust. And the people who are trying to make sense of the information were not the experts in the domain. So they wanted some signals about whether this is peer reviewed, has it been published, is this just somebody writing a blog, or is this a scientific paper? So we created what I call biomedical search. That is an example of saying, hey, listen, we need to innovate the approach to aggregate and curate information. Information's already out there. um, the technology is already out there. It was not a new technology that we created. It was the application of the technology with the problem that existed, which did not have a solution at that point of time, and was the need of the hour. So the market, the technology, and the opportunity all sort of came together and helped us create this platform. Of course, it's a non-for-profit, like it's a free service for anybody to use. We created it because of COVID-19. But Hoifeng and Jinfeng Gao and Paul Bennett, the creators of that, were essentially collaborating, bringing different perspectives together to sort of look at how can we solve the problem of misinformation. That was the problem that they were trying to solve within the healthcare ecosystem. The last one is a technology innovation. So I I kind of sort of share that there are two kinds of innovations, which I'll come back to in a second. But that is fundamentally creating net new technologies with Microsoft Premonition, and I'll go into that in a second, to solve problems that we did not know that we had. So 600 million people are affected by mosquito-borne diseases every year. The way that I was thinking about predictive sort of health at that point of time in 2013 was that if I'm able to understand the symptoms of the patient faster than the aggregated sort of results, then I might be able to increase the time to knowledge. So essentially, it was like somebody falls ill. Can I understand that, like, signal? That's a signal. And can I aggregate it and tell you that, hey, listen, 50 people have fallen ill in the last like 3 months. There must be something happening here. Uh, and that was my approach to thinking. But that meant that people still had to follow. Ethan, the guy I'm working with, so Ethan Jackson, who leads Microsoft Premonition, had a different approach. And I've been collaborating with him, and his approach was this: why do we want people to fall ill for us to predict that they might be a disease? And I asked him, what do you mean by that? Like, I mean, we have health records, we can like aggregate, people go to a doctor, people buy drugs. He's like, yeah, all of those are lagging indicators. Like, people have to fall ill for them to either go to a hospital, go to a doctor, go buy drugs, uh, and drugs, I mean, like medical drugs. Uh, just a caveat. So as as we think about this problem space, can we somehow think about potentially predicting when people might fall ill? And I was like, I don't know. Uh, and his idea was, what if we were able to track the mosquitoes that were carrying the diseases? Because as soon as the mosquito populations grow, we might be able to predict these mosquitoes can carry these forms of diseases. So we should actually intervene at that point of time with the mosquitoes itself. So instead of waiting for a person to fall ill, aggregate the data, and go to a hospital, which takes 21 days, even in the best systems, he was like, we should be able to predict that this disease might happen. So let's just like prevent that from happening early on. And this approach was unique, but the technology for that approach, which was like real time information of mosquitoes, was not built. Like, think about a weather station. So, think about how you can ask Google or Siri or whatever your favorite assistant is, hey, what's the weather like outside? And today we can give you an answer. It's real time information. Yes, you can see, look outside your window, but now it's aggregated and you can use that data to do other stuff. Sailors use it to find the patterns and pathways for their ships. Airplanes use it for flying airplanes, and a lot of concerts use it to plan whether they need to put a tent on the concert and the music festival or not. So those kind of pieces of information became very crucial. But now we did not have a weather station for mosquitoes. We had to fundamentally go back and build net new technology once we had identified the gaps. So we created new hardware, new sensor networks, new forms of doing metagenomics that don't exist anywhere in the world. And that is what I want to sort of call the technology innovation. So the two kinds of applied innovation are the technology innovation, which is the example of premonition that I gave, and business model innovation, which is a lot more common. And I'll walk you through an example of one of those business model innovations as we talk about design. So if we are to talk about design, there's a big misconception that if I'm not an artist, I cannot be good at design. And that is a problem because design is not about how you draw, it's about how you think. Uh, and it's about how you use your skills or how do you use your problem solving abilities to approach a problem. So, one of the core misconceptions that I think people have is that they think design is this. Uh, Adobe Illustrator, PowerPoint, a Keynote, whichever kind of tool you want to think about. They're like, I don't have a computer, I don't have a subscription to like PowerPoint, I don't have a subscription to Office, I can't really design, I don't know how to use Visio, so on and so forth. That is a massive misconception. All you need to do to design is this. You need a pen and you need paper. That's it. If you have a pen and a paper or a pencil and a paper, anything that can make a mark, uh, that's all you need to start designing. Because designing is thinking about problems. It's not about using the tools to make the design look pretty. Of course, you need that for your pitches, for everything else later down the line. But to get started, this is all you need. You need a pen and a paper. That's it. You don't need a computer. You don't need technology. You need your brain. That's it. So, if I'm to sort of talk about a particular design approach, let's assume that I was trying to build um, a solution for a hyper connected taxi service. I have to start with a few things. I have to start with the why. Why would people care about it? And uh, I can start looking, and that's where I said immerse yourself in the community that you want to serve, immerse yourself in to the problem that you're trying to solve. So taxi stands are too far, walking time to the taxi stand is too long, and parking is hard to find, um, and in some cases it's expensive. So you kind of start distilling those three things, which is like, I need convenience. I don't want to walk to a taxi stand. I just want it here. I want to save time because I would rather spend more time with my friends, my family, than I would spend waiting for a taxi in the middle of a road or on a taxi stand. And I want to save some money. I don't want to spend money on sometimes buying a car to get around, but also in other cases parking being expensive, and I don't want to spend the money on parking. I just want to get there and be done. So that's kind of the why, and that helps you create a value proposition. So this is not the value proposition, but this will help you create a value proposition. Then you're like, okay, how do I actually deconstruct that problem? So what do I do? So now I start taking little bits and pieces of what I know. So that's like my learning, my skills, my understanding of the problem. I'm like, people have a mobile phone. A mobile phone has location services in it. A mobile phone has communication services in it. And you know what? Actually, if I have a mobile phone with the person who wants it and the person who is driving the taxi, I can connect them so that they can use the location services to come closer and sort of save time. That way, it's the taxi person does not have to wait, the driver does not have to wait, and the person who's waiting for the ride does not have to wait. But then, what does the data flow look like? What does the process look like? So you just sketch it out. You sort of say, "Hey, listen, this is what it looks like. It's one small little paper. That's all you need. That's on your screen as well." You are like, okay, the person will ask our app, "Hey, I want a taxi." Our app will find a taxi and request a taxi to go pick up the person. The taxi will accept the request and pick up and drop the person. The person will pay us through the app and we will pay the taxi. Now, that's a hypothesis. You need to test it out whether this would work or not. Why would it not work? You have to add feedback loops to that. Like you have to understand how you will get information back uh, on any of these steps that does not work. How do you assess it? How do you measure it? Uh, and that's like sort of saying that if I ask you a multiple choice question and your answer is wrong. So if I say, what is 10 plus 10? And I give you four options, which is like it's 100, it's 20, it's 11, and you give me an answer which is like 100. I say, no, that's wrong. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, why was it wrong? Uh, because 10 plus 10 is 20 is not an answer. It's is not the answer to this. It's like, why is 10 plus 10 20? So you go back into thinking about, okay, what is the addition mechanism look like? And that will help you answer the questions in the future. So that will help you learn addition. And I mean, all of you kind of know addition. This is like when way back when you were learning. So whenever you're picking a new skill, you always have those hypotheses where you try out those problem, like easy problem sets to try out, okay, yeah, I know what 10 plus 5 is, I know what 7 plus 2 is, so on and so forth. And that's exactly how you have to approach this problem. You have to break it down into smaller problems, see if it works. Try it with one person, try it with two people, try it with 10 people, try it with 15 people, try it with 1,000 people. And that's when you will realize that, okay, what is happening consistently and how do you do that? And the third problem is, okay, how do I execute on it? Like now I have an idea, but now I'm stuck. Like I don't know how to start. And I'll give you a few frameworks that I use, but you can build your own framework. You know how to build frameworks because you use a timetable to go to school. That's how you work. So, like your chapters are broken down into answers, and the I think it helps you stay on track for what you're doing. That is exactly, yeah, that is and that's what I would generate. So how you sort of take these skills, which is the way that you think, and that you have, and bring them together to think create something. So I give you a few thoughts, none of which I use every day. Uh, you have to go through all of them. I don't want to you should check in Facebook and your how to be uh, design justice is focused on creating and leveraging uh, the uh, the community-centric practices that makes you build responsible technology. And risk-driven business model helps you de-risk your model, and disciplined entrepreneurship helps you execute. So those are the four books that I would sort of highlight and recommend. But other than that, I have a couple of models for you. So if I call this the Tinkerpreneur engine, and sort of talk about what do I do? How do I get started? You start off with the signals. You uh, find your why. You find how and what do you want to. Okay, my camera is not working for some reason. Just give me a second. That seems to be working. Sorry. Uh, WebEx just gave me a thing. Uh, Okay. So in the Tinkerpreneur engine, you have to think about the signals that you're getting. And these are the market signals. These are the signals from the ecosystem, the problem that you want to solve, the people who would care about it. And you have to find the why would they care about it, does this problem needs solving, and what do you do to solve that problem, and what is the state of the art today. So how do you look at that problem today? So if I was to talk about a different completely different problem statement, let's say I want to organize a cricket match, and if I if I want to organize a cricket match, I need to know how many people will show up to that cricket match and who is playing and how do they want to sort of what is it that they want to experience and understand. So uh, the signals would be I start talking to people. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm organizing a cricket match. Would you like to come? And then they'll ask you a question, who's playing? Now, you could say that actually we are playing. Do you want to come and support us? You'll find some people who want to come and support you. And that would be like the first step of aggregating signals. But then you realize like there's only 5 people who want to come and see you play a cricket match. You're like, that won't even cover the cost of the bat and the ball because you want to buy a bat and a ball for this cricket match. You're like, okay, let me see. Let me go and talk to, I don't know, Rahul Dravid because I like him. So I go to Rahul Dravid and I'm like, please, Rahul Dravid, can you come play a cricket match with our local community? I would love that to happen, by the way. Just saying, Rahul Dravid, if you're listening, I would love to see you someday. But anyway, I talked to Rahul Dravid and I asked him that, hey, listen, would you come to sort of play a cricket match in our local community? And he would be like, okay, tell me how many people are there. So essentially, I would go back and say that, hey, listen, if you're playing, I think there'll be a lot of people, but let me go back and check. So I come back, I tell my community, I'm like, hey, listen, I'm organizing a cricket match and there is a possibility Rahul Dravid might come and play. Now, all of a sudden, I have like 1,000 people who are like, yeah, we want to see that cricket match because Rahul Dravid is playing. So now you have the signal. Now you need to find out, okay, what are they willing to pay for watching Rahul Dravid play? So they say, we'll give you 5 rupees each. And you don't want to make a lot of money. You just want to cover the costs of this cricket match. You're like, okay, great. So I've got like 5,000 rupees, 5 rupees each, 1,000 people. Amazing. I go back to Rahul Dravid. I'm like, there's 1,000 people who will come and watch. And Rahul Dravid is like, okay, great. And you ask him, do you want to be paid? He's like, no, I'm happy to play because I love cricket. And your problem is solved. So you've aggregated those market signals. You've gone back and iterated on finding a solution to your problem, which was buy a cricket bat, cricket ball, organize a cricket match because you want to play a cricket match. So those are the signals that you've aggregated. You have iterated on your vision. You have iterated on your value proposition. So vision is still the same, which is I want to play a cricket match for the entertainment of the community. But the value proposition has changed, which is essentially now bringing in people, community, and a star player. And the partners and customers in this case, the partner is Rahul Dravid because he's coming and he's not charging any money, but he's sort of giving his skill and his time and his fame to play this cricket match. And the customers are all the people who are coming to watch it. And now, how do you measure whether this cricket match has been successful or not? You just go and see how many people showed up, how many people paid, how many people were happy. Because it's not just about them paying once and being upset about it later. They should leave happy. They should leave happy because that's when they will come back to your next cricket match. And then eventually you can have probably a match with all the stars of Indian cricket team versus having one star. And that's how you scale. That's the whole idea of scaling. So once you figure out who cares about it and how do they perceive us, you can curate this sort of community around the product that you create. In this case, the product was a cricket match. It was not a technology product. And you don't always have to build a technology product, but you can use technology to amplify your product. You can use technology to spread the word. You can use technology to live stream it. You can use technology to essentially have virtual hangouts and chat rooms and meet the player that is coming. So you can do all of that using technology. So technology is a tool, not a solution, and you can build sort of different ecosystems around it where you use technology to solve the problem and make yourself unique. So another sort of deeper thinking slide, another approach is this more detailed approach. If you really want to do a whole full-fledged startup, this is a distillation of all the four books that I had recommended earlier. So this is heavily borrowed from those four books, and I will leave this for you to sort of mull over and explore and understand. But at a very high level, it's about finding why the space matters to you. Who's the initial market? That initial market in the cricket match example was the people who supported you without any question. They were the people we call the friends and family round when we're trying to raise money for a startup. Those are the people who I call my sponsors when I'm working in a large company and trying to solve the same problem. The competitive advantage and the value. So, what can you do for the customers? Those people who want to watch the cricket match, or those people who want to combat mosquito borne diseases, same question: what can I do for them? And then why me? Why us? Why you? Like, you have to answer that. What are the unique skill sets? What are the unique perspectives that you bring that allows you to solve this problem? And then sort of you go into, once you've solved for these four buckets, once you've had a fair idea, that's where you go into, okay, now how do I grow my customer base? How do I go to the second set of people who did not want to watch the cricket match with me playing, but now they want to watch when Rahul Dravid is coming? So what do you have to do to acquire those customers? What are the kind of levers that you have to pull? What are the kind of shortcuts that you might form in your brain over a period of time to unlock value for the broader ecosystem? And then how do you make money? Because essentially, if you're building a business of any sort, uh, you can have a sustainable social enterprise which still makes money because you have to fund it. You can't be reliant on grants and charity over a period of time. So, how do you make money? How do you reinvest it? And then, how do you sell your product even more? Like, how do you reach a point where you don't have to go to the customers, but the customers come to you? And that's kind of a flywheel effect that you want to create at a period of time. So this is just another approach for you to use and leverage. And um, and with that, I will jump to questions.
Great, thanks, Siddharth. So the first question was actually understanding e-commerce a little better. You took the example of e-commerce in the beginning. Some students weren't exactly familiar with what that is. If you can walk them through that.
E-commerce is just everything that you see in the world today: Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal, anything that allows you to buy stuff on a phone or a website, or even like WhatsApp. So anything that allows you to buy stuff using technology is e-commerce. So that's the easiest definition of it that I use for myself as well. So I would stick to that.
Makes
Instead
sense.
of going to your kirana shop, you just buy it online. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. The next is around market signals, and I know you gave a very interesting example of cricket and sort of organizing a cricket match. But if I think what would be interesting to explore within this is what if it was something that you weren't familiar with, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
building for a space that you don't know very well for yourself, or if it's something new. In that case, how do you think about market signals? Because I think that's something a lot of students are also going through as they, design their products for Tinkerpreneur.
Absolutely. And that's where sort of going back to my earlier example about healthcare, health tech, even though I had a familiarity with the concept, uh, I had to go back and talk to these people. I had to immerse myself in volunteering myself for 2 years. Like, I actually did give up my job with the technology consulting company to go to the villages because I could not do it at the same time. And uh, and and that's where you have to make some trade-offs to enhance your learning. So either you participate in what is the state of the art for the problem today. So how is the problem being solved today? And then you say, I will volunteer to be a part of the system that is solving the problem today. And sometimes the best innovations come from people who really understand the state of the art today. So I would say that if you don't understand a problem space, talk to subject matter experts, talk to people who are going through it, talk to the communities that are affected, figure out who are those people in general. But if you can, you can't do it all always, but if you can, volunteer to become a part of the system that is solving the problem that you want to solve in a different way. Even if you know that process is broken, you'll find out exactly why it's broken, exactly why it doesn't work. So that's my recommendation. It doesn't work for everything. It worked for me in one particular case, but I'm not saying that it will work for everything. But if you can, that is the most powerful way of aggregating market signals.
Absolutely. I think immersion is the best way to understand any ecosystem. The next question is actually very interesting, which is between design and productivity in a product, what should you sort of optimize for? That is assuming that a product can't be both productive and beautiful. Um,
So So yeah, I think I work with some absolutely amazing designers, and what surprises me is their decks are usually the simplest, and there's the design should follow. Uh, and I'm not the right person to give this answer, but I'll still say it. And it's like design should follow what you're trying to solve for. It should follow what you're trying to do. Communication design is very different from product design, which is very different from artistic design. So if I'm trying to create an art piece where it has to look good in a gallery, of course, I'm going to care deeply about how it looks. But when I'm talking to my team and the interns who support me, this is the kind of design I want from them. I don't care about a PowerPoint. Sketch it out, send me a photo. That's it. So over here, I'm designing for content. I'm designing for a solution. So different levels of design are useful, like different levels of essentially I would call beautification are useful at different periods of time in a product lifecycle. If you build a UI and that UI is the only interaction layer for your product to your customers, it should be beautiful. It should be nice. It should make them feel good. It should have some emotion. I'm not saying that that should not be invested in. Absolutely, you should invest in that because that is the gateway to your product. That is your brand. That is your identity. And you want to, like you dress up when you go out for a meeting or a pitch, you want your product to dress up as well. But internally, when you're talking in a safe space, think about yourself in the couch watching Netflix with your family. You don't dress up in a suit and a tie to do that, and that's product design when you're doing it internally. So think about it. What's the audience that will look at it? What do they care about? How do they perceive us? And how much do I need to invest in beautification? So like I said, think about you going out for an interview versus you sitting with your family for Netflix.
Makes sense. The next is around sort of brainstorming for design. Like, I mean, is there a specific process you follow when you think about new product or a new sector or anything new that you're working on? Any advice you have to get started? Because I think the initial um, few minutes of the process of getting started is the hardest. Once you're in the flow, it gets easier subsequently. Hey Siddharth, can you hear me? I think there's some technical issue because I can hear my own voice echo as well.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. I'm just trying to figure out if it's my thing.
No, I think it might be just some technical issue. I don't think it's either at my end or your end.
Yeah, I can't hear you completely, but uh,
Can you hear me now? Should I repeat my question once again?
okay. Uh, so can you hear me? Could you rephrase ask the question again? Yes, please.
Great. So the question was around brainstorming and getting started. Like the hardest part with ideation or thinking about design or a new product is just the beginning. It's about getting started. Do you have any process to begin a brainstorming session by yourself or with your team, or is it different every time as you do it?
So there is a process which is well known as the double diamond process in sort of brainstorming. So it's like you go wide, then you focus, then you go wide, and then you focus. Um, I I I think that is the best way to go about it. Like you generate a lot of ideas, you generate a lot of potential solutions, and you don't try to solve for whether that solution is right or wrong. And no idea is a bad idea at that point of time. So you just go because like you won't get crazy ideas if you try to validate them. And that's the point of that like first phase. You go for breadth, you go for like any kind of idea. And you don't worry about how much money would it take, how difficult will it be to solve. You just like throw the idea on a wall and you put it up there. The second phase is you start to rationalize it. And now you're like, okay, out of all of these ideas, let me think about what is feasible. Why us, which is the question that I said, like what unique skill sets do we have, how can we solve it, how does the market care about it. So to give you an example of an idea, it could be a cricket match that you're thinking completely played in holographic ecosystems, like you are everybody is wearing a VR headset, everybody's looking at that, and you're playing a cricket match, and you can see, you can be on the pitch, you can be the umpire, you can be a player in the match live with their view, and you can watch the cricket match from that. Now that's a great idea. Can we execute it? Probably not today. Maybe in the future, absolutely. So then you start rationalizing those ideas. That's not a bad idea because a lot of ideas just take time, and you can reinvigorate an idea later down the line. It took me 6 years to build AI for health from an idea that I had in 2013 to actually executing on it in 2020. So the ideas might not be bad. You just brainstorm, you put them, you file them, you keep them. I have a notebook where I keep all my ideas. So I have one notebook for that. But essentially, you start off with brainstorming, you put all the ideas, then you keep the most rational ideas with you. Then you sort of start looking at how do you execute it, how do you operationalize it, how can you actually start executing on it, which is the timetable sort of thing, which I sort of put out. Uh, and then you scale, and eventually at some point of time some other idea from the brainstorming discussion might become useful, and you might use it.
That's really helpful. So most students participating in Tinkerpreneur, they're participating in teams. And in your presentation, you mentioned that if you don't know something, you should just find someone else who can support you to do that. So by default, they already have some sort of extended support. So the question here is that if there's a team of 2 to 3 students, do all of them need to um, be good with design or think about design, or is this something that just one can take lead on?
The best teams that I've seen work, and this is actually speaking from experience, that teams that I work in as well, is heterogeneous teams that trust each other. So that's the important bit, trust each other. So if I'm doing something, like if I'm the business, so usually I'm the business and sort of incubation person. The rest of my team, which is doing robotics and metagenomics and epidemiology, trust me that I will figure it out, and that puts an accountability on me. Absolutely, it makes me feel responsible, but it also empowers me to go and do things and try things in my realm, so I can do business model innovation while they're doing technology innovation. So that's the kind of like thing that you want to happen. I have Premonition, for example, is a team of 9 people, and almost all 9 of us have a different skill set. We have completely different skills, but we trust each other, and we trust each other to essentially bring our skill set to the forefront. And I mean, of course, you have to be accountable for it. You have to do a good job, but those are the teams that work the best, where uh, you don't try to solve the same problem. Like you don't need 3 people to do the same thing. You need to be on board of the process. So yes, that is true. You need to be on board and you need to be a part of the process, but you need to do your role. You need to figure out what you need to do. You don't all need to be design thinking experts.
Got it. So the next is slightly specific again to the boot camp. Recently, the students learned how to build a chatbot. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, and like most of them, they were introduced to different tools and softwares that exist that help you make, say, no code chatbots, or because
Mhm.
that eventually becomes an important part of the customer experience, getting sales conversions, all of that. So a lot of students are asking, how would you sort of design a chatbot today if you had to?
How would I design a chatbot? First and foremost, I would question, and hopefully there's a simple answer to this, is do I need a chatbot? And the answer is yes. If most of your stuff is online and needs an interaction layer, then maybe yes is the answer. The second question is my process complicated enough to warrant a chatbot? Like, if I'm investing time and effort and money into building a chatbot, why am I doing it? Why do I need a chatbot? What is the alternative? So I'll sort of look at the alternatives and I'll rationalize whether or not I need a chatbot at this point of time, or do I need a chatbot at a future point of time. The thing that we should not do is future proof to an extent where we are thinking about 100 years in the future, uh, because the product will change by then. So if you do need a chatbot because you think actually that's a value add, uh, and I'll just give you an example. Health is an amazing place to have chatbots. Like, it is extremely needed because it's so much information to go through. You don't know how will you click, where will you click, and there are so many different paths that you can take, and path navigation is super hard. So if I was building a health tech startup, absolutely I would have a chatbot, because that would allow me to make the process easy for my customer. So that's my answer. Like, I would first question, should I build a chatbot? Why should I build a chatbot? What is the trade-off that I'm looking for? And mostly, if you have a technology-led interaction and you have a lot of information and or a lot of diverging pathways, chatbots are helpful. But you need to, again, like I said, rationalize that.
Great. I think that'll be very helpful for them to think about, because this becomes a slightly more familiar example that they've just about learned.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's good.
yeah. The next question I see is around even thinking like the artistic design versus the usability design, right? Because they're both different yet similar. Apple is a good example of combining both together to build a very interesting product. Um,
Absolutely.
Versus, there are different, like the art gallery is one where it's just more about the artistic design and other things. Do you have any suggestions for students to actually combine both the usability of design and the artistic aesthetic of design? And is there a balance they maintain? Is it a spectrum? How should they think about it?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and there's no right answer to this question, because uh, it really comes down to one thing, which is how do you delight your customers? How do you delight the person who's going to be using your product? Apple, even though very artistic, is very simple. It's very minimalistic. It actually delights artists because it's almost like a blank sheet of paper that they can create on, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. I mean, I personally love Apple and their products because it is simple. It's like giving me a blank sheet of paper is the best thing that you can do if I have to create something new. It's easy to use, it's functional, it's not overwhelming. And that's what I said. Like, some of the best artists that I do have that I work with often give me the simplest things. And it's hard to simplify. It's really, really hard to simplify. So the artistic design also follows the patterns of what world we are living in today. So there is an entire art history class which I will forego for now, but essentially the world that we live in today defines the art and the design language around us. So because we are using mobile phones which have small screens, flat design is taking off. That is actually immensely artistic because you have to think about it, but it's also thinking about the constraints of the art. It's not going to hang in a gallery. A gallery could, you could have a variety of different things. You could have fine paintings, but we can't do that now. And if you think about the evolution of logos, actually, when those logos came out versus the logos now, and maybe in the future they change again, that is a very good example of artistic design in product, where you have to think about the look and the feel and the emotion, uh, and then you have to think about the functionality. So it's a balance that you have to keep driving, and I think logos and the evolution of logos is a great example of that.
Amazing. And I think as they go through more sessions on marketing, branding, I think design, or especially a lot of things we discussed today, will be important again. So I'm sure a lot of students joining in can come back and watch this session. So Siddharth, with that, we're actually towards almost the end. The final question I have is actually anything else you'd like to share with the students? So they're done, like I mentioned, with learning all the technical skills they need. Now they start with the more adventurous part of putting them together, building a product, and selling it, pitching it, and all that comes with it. So any piece of advice as they embark upon this?
uh, Yeah, no, I'm absolutely amazed when I go back, think about high school. Like my time was completely different. So I'm in awe of these students. I'm amazed with the kind of work that they're doing and what you've shared with me previously as well. Like it's heartwarming to see uh, the kids, well, think so deeply about the problems, and we need that. We need people to think deeply about the problems that we are facing today, because we need unique and disruptive solutions. So it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to have this conversation. I think they would know more about it than I could ever imagine, but that's the best thing as somebody who's passing on the knowledge, because this knowledge has been aggregated with my learning experience and interactions with people who have passed it on to me. And I hope that I can do the same, and they can pass it forward and build great products, build responsible products, build things that should have a positive impact in the world. That's all I wish. Um, and when you think about user experience, I'll just leave you with one story, which is like we all sort of thought about user experience in a different way, but then one fine day we were forced to think about user experience from the perspective of a mosquito. And that took like us 4 years to figure out, what does a mosquito care about? Why do they bite? Why do they get attracted to things and stuff like that? That wasn't a skill that any of us had, but we worked on it. And there is something to be said about hard work and determination to just get to the answer that you want. It may work, might not work, but embrace that ambiguity, that uncertainty as an entrepreneur, as a tinkerpreneur, uh, because the best thing is to not have an answer, because you know that that problem has not been solved yet. So if you find yourself in a place where you can't find an answer easily, get energized by it. Sort of think deeply about it, and maybe you can come up with a solution, because like that's how the world progresses. So thank you so much, Varia, for this opportunity.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for staying up late and doing this session. I know for a fact a lot of students have already learned a lot, and more will be joining in and watching this. So thank you everyone for spending your Sunday morning with us, and I'll see you in the next session in the coming days. Thank you.